So in this activity, which is the blood stain and pattern analysis, you are going to use several materials. So that should be labeled separately. We need those materials in order for us to make an artificial blood and also to measure the blood stain or blood pattern. The materials that we need are: first, the measuring materials, the yarn, the food coloring, the black coffee, and the flour. And also, we need a container and a beaker. Now, first, we'll make an artificial blood. So the process of making an artificial blood are: first, we need to dissolve the instant coffee or the black coffee on hot water. By stirring continuously, the powdered or the black coffee will be dissolved. We need a lot of black coffee in order for us to replicate those or the dark red color of human blood. After dissolving the black coffee, we will now add the flour for us to achieve those thick texture or viscosity of the blood. Then again, we need to mix it in order for us to dissolve the flour completely in the water. After dissolving the flour, we'll now add the food color or the red food color for us to achieve those vibrant color or the vibrant red color of the blood. Then stir continuously until all the substances or the powdered materials are mixed. After that, the addition of ketchup will help us to achieve the thick viscosity of our replicated blood or the fake blood. As what you can see, the mixture is still runny or still watery, so we'll now add an additional flour for it to be thick and to achieve the viscosity of the blood. So those are the process in order for us to replicate or to make a fake blood to be used in this activity. Now let's proceed on putting cordon at the crime scene. The cordon should be at least 3 feet from the ground. As what you have seen, we are measuring the cordon for it to be exactly 3 feet above the ground. Putting cordon at the crime scene plays a significant role in investigation. Cordon serves as the boundary for an ordinary human. The cordon protects the blood stains or the evidences from the human interruption. Now let's proceed to the first activity, which is the blood stain patterns. Now let's proceed to the passive blood stains. In passive blood stains, you have different types. First drop is the series of drops. The shape of these drops vary depending on the surface. After identifying the blood drops, it will be now measured using 2 rulers and will be marked with the evidence number. Now let's proceed to the pool of blood. The pool of blood occurs when the victim is lying in one place or in the ground while bleeding heavily. After determining the pool of blood, it will now be measured and then labeled with the evidence number. Next is the blood trail. The blood trail are those drops of blood that was left by the victim by moving from one place to another. So we have two types of blood trail. First is the slow blood trail. Slow blood trail occurs when the victim is moving slowly from one place to another. Next blood trail is the fast blood trail. The fast blood trail occurs when the victim is moving fast from one place to another. Next, we have the projected blood stain. Projected blood stain occurs when there are force that is greater than the gravity acts to create the blood stain. So first, in projected blood stain, we have the splash. So in splash, you can tell the direction of the blood or where the blood came from by determining its tail or the tail of a single blood stain. So next, in projected blood stain, we have the arterial gush. So the arterial gush is when the dark and light patterns caused by the pumping heart when an artery is cut, usually found on walls or ceiling. And lastly, we have the impact. In the impact, we have the low, medium, and high. So first, we have the blood stain caused by a high impact. This is a fine spray often formed from a gunshot. Next is the medium impact. The medium impact occurs when a force like a baseball bat is applied. Then lastly, we have the low impact. The low impact mostly under the impact of the gravity. It is similar to the blood drop on the or the passive blood drop on the first slides. So we have the transfer or contact blood stain. So transfer or contact blood stains occur when a bloody surface comes into contact with a non-bloody surface, resulting in wipes, swipes, or pattern transfers like a bloody shoe print. So first we have a swipe blood stain pattern. This occurs when a moving blood-bearing object like a bloody hand, as what you can see in the example, makes contact with a blood-free surface. So next we have a white blood stain patterns. So this occurs when an object moves through a pre-existing wet blood stain, altering the original pattern. So that is what you can see in the video. So now let's proceed to the part 2 of the activity. So in this activity, we are going to discuss the basic parts of a blood spatter. But first, let's create the blood spatter. So the first thing we do is to measure 5 feet from the ground, and then place at least 1 millimeter of the purported blood on a piece of bond paper by using a dropper, and we will drop the blood 5 feet from the ground. And now let's determine the basic part of this blood spatter. So here we have the satellite drop, the parent drop, and the spines. So first part is the parent drop. So the parent drop refers to the initial main blood droplet that impacts a surface from which smaller satellite spatters can originate. So next is spines or spike edges on a blood drop. This is caused by the impact of blood striking a surface, and they can provide information about the direction and angle of impact. They indicate the direction of movement when the blood is dripping, walking, or running. And the last part of blood spatter is the satellite. So the satellite blood droplets are small blood droplets ejected from a larger blood droplet upon impact, appearing as small stains around the perimeter of the parent blood stain. They are a key element in blood stain patterns analysis, providing clues about the direction and motion of the blood at the scene. So part 3, we have the blood spatter on different surfaces. So what we are going to do is to drop a blood within the height of 5 feet to the floor with the following parameters, which is first the rough surface, second is the smooth surface, and third is in the clothing. So now let's start this activity first by dropping blood on the rough surface. So, as what we have observed, when the blood drop impacts a rough surface, the surface tension of the blood is disrupted, causing the drop to break apart and create satellite stains, which are smaller, independent drops and potentially spines or tails extending from the parent drop. Next is dropping the blood in a smooth surface. So, as what we have observed, a blood drop striking a smooth surface at a 90-degree angle will result in an almost circular stain. There is a little elongation, and the spines and satellites are fairly evenly distributed around the outside of the drop. And lastly is a drop of blood in clothing. So, as what we have observed, a blood drop on clothing typically appears as a reddish-brown stain, potentially with a glossy sheen when fresh, and can vary in shape from circular to elliptical, with tails or spines extending in the direction of the travel. So part 4, we have the angle of impact. So in forensic blood spatter analysis, the angle of impact refers to the angle at which a blood droplet strikes a surface, and this angle influences the shape and appearance of the resulting stain, helping to determine the direction and trajectory of the blood. So as what you have seen in the video, we created here a blood stain which is we can determine or we can find a blood drop which has a tail. So we were tasked to determine the location where the blood came from by analyzing the characteristics of its width and length. So the first thing we do is we determine or we find a two blood stain which has a tail. After finding the two blood stain, so we measure its length and its width. To know the point of angle of a blood stain, first you will measure its length and next its width. So to get its angle, we used a formula which is the width divided by the length. So the length of our first drop is 1.5 centimeter. And its width is 0.8 centimeter. So bear in your mind that when we are determining the size of a blood stain, we will use the centimeter. So the degree of this blood stain is 32.005. So the formula is width divided by length, then arc seen the answer, so we will get the 32.005 degree or angle. So now let's proceed to our second blood drop. So the point of angle of blood stain number 2, first we measure again its length, then its width. So again, width divided by the length, then arc seen the answer for us to get its degree or the point of angle. So the length of this blood stain is 2.0 centimeter. And its width is 1.0 centimeter. Again, width divided by length, then arc seen the answer, so we can find the point of angle of a blood stain. Bear in your mind that when we arc seen or when we compute the angle of the blood stain, we use the scientific calculator. So the point of angle of the blood stain number 2 is 30 degrees. So in part 5, we have the point of convergence and origin. So in blood spatter analysis, the point of convergence is the two-dimensional area where lines drawn through the long axis of the individual blood stains intersect, indicating the location of the blood source, while the point of origin is the three-dimensional location from which the blood spatter originated. So in this activity, we were tasked to produce at least 20 distinct blood spatters and identify its point of origin using its convergence point. Here we are starting to find the 20 blood or distinct blood spatters by finding the blood spatters with tail. After finding the blood spatters with tail, we measure its length and its width, same as the procedure we used in the activity 4 or the part 4. After measuring its length and width, we will going to compute it. Again, width divided by the length, then asking the answer to get the point of angle of a blood stain or its degree. It is important to record all the sizes or the measurement of a blood stain for us to identify or to make it correct. Again, we use the app scientific calculator or the scientific calculator itself to compute or to determine the angle and the degree of a blood stain. In every blood stain that is determined, you should put a yarn in it, then pull it towards where the tail came from. So by doing that, we can determine the point of convergence. Then by determining the point of convergence, we can find the point of origin. After putting some yarns and determining the 20 blood spatters, we're now going to put the evidence number of each blood spatter for us to determine if it is already 20 spatters. Then after finding the point of convergence, we can now lift up the yarn towards the top or the pole wherein it is put in the point of convergence for us to determine or to find the point of origin. So as what you have seen here, we already lift off the yarn. So by lifting off the yarn, first we should always find the degree of the blood spatter for us to lift off the yarn and to put it in the point of origin.
Importance of blood stain pattern analysis. Blood stain pattern analysis is crucial in crime scene investigation, providing vital information about the sequence, nature, and location of events, as well as the potential movement of victims and perpetrator. It aids in reconstructing the crime scene and corroborating witness statement. Here's how blood stain pattern analysis is important. First is reconstructing the event. Blood stain pattern include their shape, size, and distribution, reveal clues about the event that occurred, like the type of weapon used or the position of people at the time of the incident. Second, determining movement patterns. The location of distribution of blood stain can indicate movement of individuals, revealing if someone was hit, shot, or wiped down. Third, corroborating witness statement. Bloodstain pattern can support or refuse witness accounts, helping establish the credibility of statement. Fourth, establishing the sequence of event. By examining bloodstain patterns, investigator can determine the order of event in a crime. For instance, whether a victim was moved after the attack. Fifth, identifying potential perpetrator. Bloodstain pattern can help determine the number of people involved or exclude potential suspect from the investigation. Lastly, Differentiating between self-inflicted and external wounds. By analyzing bloodstain patterns, investigator can distinguish between injuries sustained during a struggle and injuries inflicted by the person themselves, for example, in cases of suicide or self-harm.